fuck it, we'll do it live. We're live with another episode of BS Busters. Thank you for joining us. My name is Matthew Wesley. I'm joined by my co-host. Sir, introduce yourself.
It's Koshi Bonito. Glad to be here on another one of these casts.
Yeah, glad to have you. So we're talking scary games, movies, and for a real topic, the 7 deadly sins of bad boss fights.
Yeah.
And why do games continuously just get shittier and shittier?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the $1 million question right there. So that being said, let's get into it. Sir, before we do, sir, what you been playing?
I'm playing Mario Brothers Wonder.
Mm-hmm.
That came out a couple days ago. The game's pretty good. It's compared to the Super Mario Brothers new Super Mario Brothers game. I feel like there's a little more creativity that went into it.
I mean, I can understand that because the original Mario Brothers was New Super Mario Brothers was a reimagining of the original Mario Brothers,
Yeah.
and then two was an expansion upon that, and then Wii was like it was built around co-op couch co-op,
Yeah.
and you I think was the pinnacle of the New Super Mario.
Yeah.
Like that was that was the best it was gonna get. But here's the thing though. Even like the ones that I consider to be the most mediocre game in that series, which I would say is two, the one with the gold flower and all that shit, it's still not bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are like, I remember people saying this game is terrible. I'm like, is it? You know?
Yeah.
So, oh god, oh man. So anyway, let's let's get started. So this is my Halloween cast because the next time there will be officially a cast for this channel will be the day after Halloween. So I can't do a Halloween cast the day after Halloween. Plus, I will probably be recovering from my Halloween party that I'm throwing on Tuesday. Uh, so yeah. So that being said, let's talk about it. I don't know about you, but I find most video games to not be all that scary.
Yeah.
Like I'm like everyone's like, "Oh, this is really scary." I'm like, no, I'm not feeling it." And I've been
Yeah. What
playing
was that
games a
from like a
long
trailer?
ass time, you know.
Yeah.
And I haven't played a game that was like, "Oh, this is scary as hell." I haven't seen it. Like the closest. I mean, but then again, I mean, full disclosure, I don't really get scared about like you know, body horror doesn't really scare me. Um, I guess for me, the idea of something happening is scarier than it actually happening. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I would say, the most horrifying moment I've had in a game was a Bioware game. It was called Dragon Age Origins, and there's a moment in the
Yeah.
game where you have to fight your way down into the deep roads in order to catch up with this lady who stole something important or something. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but you got to fight your way down there, and the whole time you're being followed by this lady who's like explaining what the darkspawn do to women that they capture. And you're like before you hear in the lore of the game, it's like, well, the Darkspawn, if you're a woman, they don't kill you, they just drag you off. And it's like, oh, well, they're getting raped, which is bad, but it's like I can understand rape. It's like, it's a form of domination and terror. No, it's so much worse. So basically, in Dragon Age Origins, what the Darkspawn do to female prisoners, and the reason why the Kunari, the horned people, you don't see any females amongst their group, normally speaking, is because the Darkspawn take female prisoners and then take them down into the deep roads and put them in a cage, and then put like dead bodies in the cage. I read this in the extended in the books that were officially sanctioned. They put dead bodies in the cage and then wait till the women starve, okay? And they're forced to eat Darkspawn tainted meat. And like 8 out of every 10 women, they die. Like they get tainted, they die. The two women who don't die turn into brood mothers. So basically, their entire body is repurposed into a giant womb that creates more Darkspawn. Much faster than that bullshit ass, oh, I've been bitten by the Darkspawn, I'm turning into a Darkspawn shit. No, just breed out a whole bunch of them. And here's the thing. A brood mother can breed any other type of Darkspawn. They can breed ogres, which are the corrupted Darkspawn version of Kunari. They can breed Hurlocks, which are the Darkspawn version of a human. They can breed Shrieks, which are the Darkspawn version of elves. They can breed Genlocks, which is a Darkspawn version of dwarves. Basically, they're infantry factory supply units. And it's fucked up, man. It's fucked up. When you finally meet a brood mother, it's like, yeah, this is a tough boss fight, but I'm doing you a favor, Yeah. But yeah, that was sufficiently horrifying. I'm like,
Beyond.
That's way more terrifying than anything I ever got out of
Now we've got Congress.
What's the name of that? Out of Resident Evil, Silent Hill, or what's the other one? Haunted Mansion. Sorry, Clock Tower. It's like Haunted Clock Tower. Way scarier than any of that shit. Do you have any scary games you played where like, yeah, this is actually legit? This is terrifying.
No, because I don't. Well, name dead. Some of the I think one of the freakiest things that happened in Dead Space was those demon babies that you have to fight. I think they're in Dead Space too. That's the thing that freaked me out the most. Was like, well, man, these things are really gross looking.
Okay, full disclosure. I'm gonna tell us. I have never ever beaten a Dead Space game. I start them and then I'm like, something else comes up and I just stop playing.
Yeah, but yeah, it's these. They're relatively small and they like crawl all over you, and it's just like, man, okay, yeah, that's weird. That's weird, but just the imagery in general, Dead Space with
the dead babies. You're like, I'm not having kids anytime soon.
that and just the thing-like creatures that exist in Dead Space.
The necromorphs.
Necromorphs, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty terrifying. Actually, the whole kind of like the premise with like the cult-like behavior of the whole with the whole necromorphs and the pyramids throughout the universe. That stuff's pretty weird. But like I said, I don't play a lot. I don't really go out of my way to play a lot of horror games. So because I don't like how they control. I get why they control the way they control, but it's just
the lack of control is part of the horror. It's like you
Yeah,
see an
exactly.
enemy
Yeah,
coming, but there's nothing you can do. You have to go through the animation in order to do whatever, and that kind of bothers me. I'm like, but this isn't. This is just not
yeah. Oh,
fun.
the Resident Evil always bugged me. I got used to this in Dead Space, but even like just not being able to run and shoot, you actually got to stop and shoot, which realistically makes sense because you're not gonna be able to run and aim properly.
No, not unless you
Going
have
full
a
speed.
lot of. Not unless you have a lot of experience and you've been specially trained, and most people have not. You know,
Yeah.
like your accuracy goes way the fuck down when you're trying to aim while running and shooting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean,
Like
that's
even
that's
police
realistic
officers
now.
don't really run and shoot people.
Yeah.
Only special forces do that shit.
Yeah.
Like SEALs learn how to do that shit. You know, Rangers, Force Recon, those people. Like Joe Blow average guy doesn't do that shit.
Yeah. Shooting things is a lot harder than you'd imagine if you've never shot a gun before. Uh, according to know that you
Shoot
know
guns.
shoot guns.
Mm-hmm.
But
But
yeah,
no, go ahead.
I definitely want to play it. It looks like the remake looks really good.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the exception to
yeah,
the rule for me. I'm like, okay, I don't like Resident Evil. I think it's overrated. But RE4 is the right balance between action and like RE4. You actually feel like unlike all the other Resident Evils, where you feel like you're at the mercy of the control stick and the shitty camera. RE4, it's like okay, these villagers, I forgot the name of the parasite that took over their bodies. This parasite has taken over these villagers' bodies, and they are harder to kill. But I'm a fucking trained special forces guy. These motherfuckers don't know who they fucking with. I was like, okay, who wants some? Who wants a piece? You want a piece? you
yeah,
you want some? That's what the game feels like. You finally feel dangerous
yeah.
in a Resident Evil
Looks
game.
Yeah, it
And
looks more like a. It comes off more of like a thriller than a horror game. Everything I've seen from it.
I mean, there's horror to it because you do have these people who are just like relentless. It's like, did you just see me headshot all these motherfuckers? And then when the parasite came out, I shot that shit too, and they're still coming. I mean, most people would sense be like, nah, that dude just headshot like 8. They headshot Fred. Fred was my neighbor. He was a good people, and he's dead now. It's like I'm not gonna go
Yeah,
after that dude. Nah. I forgot the name of the parasite that's in their head. It's still the Las Plagas parasite. That they're like, no, I'm gonna keep on coming, cause RE4.
yeah,
But yeah, like that game, and then like there are horrifying aspects to RE4, but most of them are like okay, this is a man who is trained. Like at this point, Leon's been through multiple Resident Evil RE, infections and outbreaks and all that shit. So he can take care of himself. But there's you gotta fucking guard the president's daughter and shit, and
yeah,
even with your extensive training, it's some bullshit. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And that makes it interesting to me. Um, and then if you play the game, never upgrading your primary weapon, and like, and under a certain amount of time in the old game on the GameCube and the PS2 and the re-releases,
yeah,
you would unlock the infinite ammo rocket launcher, which basically just made the game like, okay, y'all want to play? Let's play. hey, chainsaw guy with the hood over your head. Guess what? I got a rocket launch. How about that? Catch me outside. How about that? So that's kind of a fun gameplay. That's kind of a fun gameplay loop. But yeah, I never found Silent Hill. Like, I guess for me, in order for something to be scary, it has to be. In order for something to be scary, it has to be. What's the word I'm looking for? In order for something to be scary for me, it has to be. Like, the suspense is scarier for me than the actual. You know. Than the actual, oh, this is scary. I'm like, nah. You know what I mean?
Wait, explain that again.
The suspense of what's happening in a game is scarier to me than the actual them getting to the actual event. You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Like, the suspense of something horrible happening is scarier to me than just a lot of horrible shit happening on screen. Because it's like, you ripped the Band-Aid off too quick. It's got to be the idea of it being ripped off.
You gotta build up. Yeah.
Yeah. But enough about that. Guess we can move on to movies. So, you don't play scary video games. Do you watch scary movies?
Not typically.
You don't go out of your way.
I don't go out of my way. See, what was the scariest movie I've seen? Yeah, I think the last movie I saw was that fake found footage movie. I forgot what it was called. It was really popular. They made like several of those movies.
The Blair Witch Project?
Not that. That was earlier. This one came later.
I don't know.
It came like much later. It came like in the mid to late 2000s.
I don't know then.
Okay, I can't remember the name of it.
Haunted House?
No, it's like two people living in this house, and they're like recording themselves, and apparently this guy's wife gets possessed by some kind of demon. Yeah, this is a little bizarre.
Can't have been that memorable if you don't remember it. I do watch scary movies, but like my threshold for what's scary is very, very high. So I can't just take anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Case in point, I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter's The Thing, which is more of a like the special effects are really good, but you earn the body horror and the special effects. You know what I mean? Because like up until like the first 20 minutes of the film, there's no special effects. And then you see this damn dog eat the other dogs and then burn that motherfucker. It's like, God damn! It's like, Jesus. And then from there, it just devolves into a bottle film where people are getting picked off one by one by one by one and turned into a thing. And how, like, the people who aren't things are trying to stay alive long enough to find out who's the thing and take them out before they get taken out. Spoiler alert, at the end of the film, there's only one or two dudes left. And we don't know if either of them is a thing or both of them are things. We don't know. And that's what makes the film such a joy for being scary.
Yeah.
It stars the excellent Keith David. The excellent Keith David, who is a national treasure. Keith David is. That man's voice is. He's got that classic theatrically trained voice where he could say practically anything, and the shit is. Almost everything he says sounds like he says it in the voice of a classically trained thespian, so the shit sounds amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, the man is amazing, and anything he's in, any horror movie that Keith David's in, I'm just like, I love it. What else is scary as shit? Movies. The first 3 Friday the 13th films are kind of scary. Especially the first one, if you don't know the twist of who the killer is. Because the whole time you're thinking it's Jason Voorhees, if you watch the later movies in the series. And then it turns out to be someone else entirely in the first movie. You're like, oh shit, I didn't see that coming. Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one is legit kind of scary. And then it turned into the Freddy Krueger comedy hour. Where he's just saying puns all the time, you know. Welcome to prime time, bitch. You know, shit like that. But I'm not gonna lie. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, still one of the best in the series. It has an excellent movie-based video game on the NES, made by Rare. So even back then, Rare made good games. Has really good music too. I think the music was also done by David Wise. So even back then, David Wise was a badass. But
These people have been around for a long time, haven't they?
Rare? Well,
Yeah.
before Microsoft bought them and destroyed the fucking studio. Which is really scary. Microsoft buys a studio. Oh shit, you fuck now. The only thing worse than Microsoft buying your studio is EA.
Yeah.
The studio's saved. Who bought us? EA. No! That's some Twilight Zone shit right there. Have Rod Serling resurrected. I submit to you that sometimes what you want might not necessarily be what you need.
Yeah.
But if you don't believe me, you can check in a mystical land called the Twilight Zone. That was my shitty Rod Serling impression. It's not very good, cause I can't get the intonations right for Rod Serling. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's keep it moving. Really, if you want scary movies, if you anything that's too off the rails, then my advice would be to go with what's a good one? Creepshow 2, Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, and any of the Tales from the Crypts. Not the movies, the TV shows.
Yeah.
Because they always had like kind of a twist that would just be like, God damn. And the twist was always like, I did shit. And if they had a celebrity, they were going to kill that celebrity in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
Like, if you were a celebrity in Tales from the Crypt, you were going to die.
How many of those movies were there?
What, Tales from the Crypt? Like
Yeah.
3. And they, like, the first one was called Demon Knight, and it wasn't bad. Um, and then the second one was Bordello of Blood, and it wasn't bad either. It just wasn't as good as Demon Knight. And then they did a third one where they kind of ran out of money, and they just like they made the shitty ass Tales from the Crypt Keeper puppet. Like, if you've ever seen the opening from Tales from the Crypt, like the Crypt Keeper is a masterwork of puppeteering. Like it is one of the best puppets you'll ever see. It's like, god damn, that is an awesome looking puppet. The puppet that they made, for the second movie is like, for that third movie, because the show had gone off, and I guess the puppet was donated to a museum, so they had to make a new puppet. But the new puppet was such a piece of shit that it was like, and it had like it had like dreadlocks on it because it was set in Jamaica. And it turns out the movie wasn't originally going to be Tales from the Crypt movie. It's just they were like, we're gonna milk this IP for as much as we can. So they basically shot some shit with their fake bullshit ass Crypt Keeper, and then like as a bookend, as to bookend the movie, and then called it a Tales from the Crypt movie, but it really isn't. Because the other movies have like the first two movies have a higher production value, and the Crypt Keeper looks like a higher level version of what he was like on the TV show. Because the TV show was shot in standard definition, and the movies were shot in a like HD for its time, like higher definition. So the puppet looks better. They did some touch-ups to the puppet, like stuff like that to make it look better. But anyway, any of the Tales from the Crypt TV show is pretty awesome. The Outer Limits, I would say.
The Outer Limits.
Yeah, the Outer Limits. The modern Outer Limits. The modern Outer Limits was kind of like made as the sci-fi. It was functionally the sci-fi answer to the Twilight Zone back in the day. And then they brought back the Outer Limits. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the Outer Limits they brought back is more or less just fucking it's like sci-fi Tales from the Crypt. Cause there ain't no happy endings. Like almost I watched the entire series one day, I binged it. I'm like, everything is just terrible.
Yeah. Felt sad at the end of the day. It's like, oh man, I watched too much of this.
I mean, you didn't do it, so you're all right. I'm just saying, like, everything is like, oh, this ain't gonna work out for nobody. Like, there's one with this doctor, right? And he discovers that there are doctors played by Beau Bridges, Jeff Bridges' brother, okay? And like, basically, he plays this NASA scientist where they find life on Mars, but it's not the life you think. It's like these little insect-like creatures called sand kings, right? And they find eggs in the soil, and there's two of them. There's like two sets. There's green ones and there's like red ones and black ones. And so he basically like creates a little terrarium that mimics Mars's atmosphere and has the fucking bugs inside of it. And he basically like he basically brings in creatures, like he brings in meat to feed them, to grow them. And then eventually some guy's like, yeah, I heard you took something from the lab. He's like, yeah, I'll show you what it was. He takes the guy down to the lab. He knocks the guy into the tank. They eat the guy. like, so it's already turning bad, you know, because he's killing people and getting rid of the bodies in this tank. Well, what he discovers is that the Sand Kings, essentially speaking, treat him as a god. Like, they make little effigies of him. Well, one side, the black ones or the red ones, make an effigy that mocks him. And so he doesn't like that. So he goes into the tank and he like fucking knocks them down and knocks down their little thing, and they start attacking him, and he winds up burning down his lab and dying. He thinks he kills them, but at the end of the Outer Limit episode, you see where his, like, in the backyard of, like, near his house, like in the woods, you see like you see the Sand King surviving, and they built basically an effigy of his face with them coming out of the mouth, like the colony streaming at like ants. So it implies he died really badly. So very badly. And that's basically how the Outer Limits works on that shit. It's like, oh Jesus, like the modern Outer Limits, every story is a fucking downer. It's like, it's terrible. And also kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like, even the ones that are like, oh, this is kind of a feel-good story, have kind of a dark twist to them.
Yeah.
But anyway, anything to add before we move on to the next topic, sir?
No.
All right, next topic. The 7 deadly sins of bad boss fights. Now, this is an important aspect because we've all played games where you're enjoying the game and you're like, wow, this game is great. The journey was so worth the trip. You know, I experienced all these adventures. I'll never forget this. And then you get to the final boss and you're like, this is some fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this isn't like my developer is better than your developer. Every company has released games where the final boss either touched on either violated one of these, either commenced one of these 7 deadly sins, either one of them or multiples of them at the same time. I'll give an example from a company that for years actually had pretty good boss fights in their games in this series. Legend of Zelda. Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild's final boss fight is a fucking joke. It is an embarrassment. Everyone should be ashamed of that final boss fight. It basically devolves into ride your horse, have Princess Zelda shoot an arrow of light at Ganon, then you run up, or he tries to shoot something at you, and his weak spot glows. You have to jump off your horse and hit him with your bow.
Yeah.
It's lazy, and it's really fucking lazy.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember I played through that 3 times because I couldn't believe that they would make a boss fight that was this fucking lazy. And to be fair, I should have seen it coming because they kind of presaged that they were gonna have a lazy ass boss fight. Because even when you fight Ganon in the Legend of Zelda Hylian Mechazords, it's just basically variations of the same boss over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't even be bothered to make different enemy models for new bosses. Like, maybe corrupted versions of the Mechazords that you have to fight. Like, the biological version. So, like, I think in the Goron province, their Mechazord's a giant Dodongo. In the Zora province, it's a giant fucking elephant. In the Wing People province, it's a bird. In the Gerudo Desert, it's a fucking camel. Like, it would have been like, oh man, it would be cool if you're fighting like corrupted versions of like biological versions of those bosses. Nah, just Ganon over and over and over again. Just, he's got slightly different weapons this time. I'm like, it's fucking lazy, bro.
Yeah.
And don't tell me they don't know how to do bosses, because in the Gerudo Desert, there's an area where you can fight sand dragons. The sand dragons are better bosses than the bosses you fought in the damn Megazords.
Yeah.
So that just tells me that, I don't know. Maybe they ran out of time. I don't know. I don't fucking know. I just work here.
Yeah, I thought that the final boss fight was not great. Thought the boss fights, they whatever call it, they just call them Megazords. Um,
They're like the
I
Guardians of
thought,
Hyrule, but really they're the Zelda. They're the Legend of Zelda. They're the Hylian Mechazords.
yeah, they I thought they were okay. I don't think they were necessarily that bad, but yeah, um, a lot of problems is a lot of these boss fights have, you know, and a lot of these games have gotten super lazy. Like a lot of the final boss fights are just essentially quick time events.
Yeah, yeah. They're like, we don't have time to actually make a deep and involved, interesting boss fight, so we're just gonna make it into a quick time event. And if you don't like it, fuck you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I totally understand. I get it. It's for me, um like that's one of the cardinal sins, is just being lazy with your final boss fight. Like a final boss fight to me, like the ideal final boss fight in a game should essentially be everything, every skill and ability that you've learned up to this point, all right, should be combined in new and interesting ways, but not like a brand new mechanic pulled out of their ass, which is the second cardinal sin, in order to make the boss difficult. A lot of games like to do that shit. It's like, oh, guess what, guys? We're gonna bring a new mechanic that was not used ever for the totality of this game, and now you're gonna have to use it. It's like, what? They love to do that shit. You're like,
yeah,
so now, and what makes it the third cardinal sin of that? The first one was lazy. The second one was bringing up an entirely new mechanic at the very end. Is when number four is when it's a new mechanic that is counterintuitive. Like you were told for the whole entire of the game to not do that.
yeah,
You're like, don't do that, and now you can do it. It's like, wait, what? What's going on here? Why are you doing this, you bastards?
yeah, exactly.
They use your gaming instinct. The gaming instincts that they made you get for the entire game. Now they're like, nah, man, now you gotta fucking, now you gotta do the opposite. I'm like, no, that's lazy.
Yeah,
But do you agree, disagree, don't care?
yeah. I they were Yeah, I hate that. I hate when they give you like a, you know, oh, this power up is this glorious power up is is you can't use it until the end of the game.
Yeah. Oh well,
And then
that's like the Master Sword from Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess. Like when you finally get the Master Sword, they still gimp the shit out of it. I'm like, why? Like the only time the Master Sword feels like the Master Sword is at the very end of the game.
yeah,
Like the very end of the game, it's like, oh, the Master Sword of old. The rest of the time they're like, well, you can only use it for so much, and then it powers down. I'm like, this is fucking stupid. It's like, then why give me the fucking sword then? I don't.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I agree. I agree. It's that's an issue. Number Do you have anything else you want to add before we move on to the last three seven deadly sins of bad boss fights?
No.
All right. Number 5 is when they basically put you into a boss fight where the fight is you're supposed to lose, but you're overpowered. They do this a lot in RPGs. Where if you're like me, I like to grind in RPGs. So by the time I get to the boss, I'm kicking their ass. The game that was most egregious with this was Skies of Arcadia. Like, there's this character named Ramirez who winds up being the final boss of the game, and he attacks your little pirate hideout and kicks your ass. But and it's supposed to be like, oh, he's undefeatable. But the thing is, I was basically like level like 83 at this point in the game because I grinded a lot because long story short, in the game, in order to unlock your special abilities in Skies of Arcadia, you have to find these things called moonberries. However, there's a part in the game where like you can get moonberries just by fighting normal enemies. It's a random rare drop. So if you grind long enough, you can get enough moonberries to unlock a ton of your special attacks early on in the game, which is what I did.
Yeah.
So by the time I got to this point in the game, I was basically like kicking this dude's ass. But I'd get him down to his last health point, and he just revive himself, and they keep on fighting. I'm like, what type of bullshit is this? So I had to throw the fight in order to move on to the next area. I was like, this is some bullshit, man. I hate. Now they don't do this so much in boss fights. What they'll do in boss fights in games, like the final boss, is that they'll have a portion of the fight where the boss is unbeatable. And then what they'll do is that they'll unlock some new ability that your character had the entire time, but now is the perfect time for you to use your full power, and then you can fight toe to toe with the boss, actually doing damage with it. And I'm like, that's some bullshit. That is some total and complete bullshit. A lot of games like to do this shit, and I don't like it. I don't like it, not one bit. It makes me It makes me angry when they do that in games. I'm like, you seriously did that shit? Yes, we seriously did that shit. I'm like, no. But that's my own opinion. Number 6, worst cardinal sin in gaming. Just kind of makes me angry. In boss fights is they do the opposite of the earlier cardinal sin, where they introduce an entirely new gameplay mechanic that you weren't using throughout the entire game. This is kind of a dark mirror of that. They take all the battle mechanics that you learned throughout the entire game and flip the shit, and the boss battle becomes something else entirely different. This is the type of shit where the final boss fight, like you're playing a beat 'em up, and the final boss fight becomes a Tetris game. You're like, what? What the fuck is this shit?
Yeah.
This is not funny.
Yeah, that's how they get you. That's how they get you.
How dare you, sir? How fucking dare you? The Simpsons video game, based on the movie, did this, where the final boss fight against God turns into a DDR game. Yeah. Which I kind of can give a little bit of a pass to it because The Simpsons has always been a little bit surreal. So I'm like, okay. understandable. But every other, like, if your game isn't based on some shit that's ridiculous itself, that is not cool.
Yeah.
Not cool at all. Which leads to my number 7 top of the line cardinal sin in games and boss video games. The boss fight is underwhelming. All right. So, the previous 6 were all the developers trying to basically make the final boss fight memorable and different. But sometimes they just say fuck it and they make an underwhelming final boss fight. This is something like Big Smoke in GTA San Andreas, where you just shoot him in the head a few times and he dies.
Yeah.
It's like this huge buildup, and you're just a bitch. The other side to this sin is having a final boss that you don't actually fight, like Officer Tenpenny in GTA San Andreas, who's really the architect of most of the fucked up shit that happens in that game. But you don't actually get to kill him. He falls off the back of a fire truck and just falls to he's all fucked up and dies by the side of the road. I'm like, and the characters are like, should we kill him? They're like, no, we can't kill a cop. It's like, you just killed everybody else, though.
Yeah. Bullet sponges too, or the final boss, or just the boss fight's nothing but just a big bullet sponge.
Oh yeah. That's I guess that we can add that as number 8. Is instead of making a boss that actually is difficult or has depth, they just basically say, okay, we don't have time for this shit, so we're just gonna make him have a ton of health, and that's the difficulty curve. I'm like, that's just fucking lazy, bro. And they're like,
Yeah.
too fucking bad. Deal with it. They're like Adam Orth, hashtag deal with it. It's like, what? How? Why? How could you do this, sir? How? Yeah, a lot of games are notoriously bad about this. Fallout games, Skyrim games, I think in order to increase difficulty in games, this kind of goes up to a larger level of the topic. I think that difficulty should be, if you're playing like an open world game, like a sandbox style game or a first person shooter, lower level enemies should be easy to kill. They should be dumb,
Yeah.
right? They're just going to run out of cover and try shooting at you, and you're going to blow their asses away. Medium tier enemies should use cover. They occasionally use grenades. Harder enemies should be smart. They should be flanking you.
Yeah.
There should be cover fire. They should use grenades. They should throw a grenade and it bounce around the corner and into your position. So you got to run and you got to retreat so it doesn't blow you the fuck up. Shit like that. Don't make an enemy into a fucking bullet sponge or give them so much goddamn health. It's like, I don't know. That's not fun. And games are supposed to be fun first. I know they're a power fantasy, but they're supposed to be fun. Like, everyone's like, well, Dark Souls is hard. Dark Souls is hard, but Dark Souls is also a power fantasy. The whole point is that you start out where everything can kill you, and then once you get further in the game, only bosses can kill you. Like normal enemies, you're like, fuck this guy. I know how to deal with this. And that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But, I don't think most people will agree with that, do you?
Nah.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess we're about to go to the very end of the cast where we give our unpopular opinion. So, go ahead, sir. Give your unpopular opinion.
Um, I mean, people are going to disagree with me, and I get it, but I understand why Nintendo is not a huge fan of tournaments, especially with some of the recent scandals that have happened in the Smash Brothers community in the past few years. They don't want their products to be associated with that. They don't want to be associated with certain behaviors. Uh, they tend to lean more towards family friendly things, and they don't want people thinking about you know these various scandals. But at the um, same time, I understand why people think those you know corporations can be weird about certain things.
Yeah. Here's what I'm gonna say. I can see where you're coming from because I recently read that article too. But here's what I'm gonna say. Uh, my counter argument to your argument. Number one, Nintendo being family friendly. All right. I was talking with one of my employees, fellow employees, employee, whatever, and she said that she only games on a Switch primarily, and she is into visual novels. She told me about a visual novel that essentially has it's some 365 days shit where a woman gets kidnapped
Mm.
by the mafia, and then it's a reverse harem where people get put into. She has a friend who gets put into a rape sex dungeon. This is a Switch game.
I was mainly talking about first party stuff.
Yeah, but
They
I
typically
mean,
present themselves.
no, I
At least a
understand
lot of
that.
their bigger first parties. But yeah, I mean they're obviously rated M games on the Switch.
Yeah, but I mean, even first
They're the
party. I mean, think about it. The whole premise behind Mario is that you have a dragon turtle who wants to kidnap. I mean, I'm going with the old canon, not the new canon. We're like, Princess Peach is a human. Fuck that shit. She's a mushroom person. He wants to rape the shit out of a mushroom person. He keeps on kidnapping a mushroom lady to rape her. It. That's. uh, I would say dealing with rapists and people taking shit away from people against their will. That's kind of like what Nintendo does.
yeah
Um,
yeah
if you extrapolate it, I'm playing devil's advocate, by the way. As far as the tournament goes, look, everyone knows Nintendo. Ultimately, it boils down to Nintendo wants to be in control. They always want to fucking be in control. That's what Nintendo
yeah
does. All right, they want to
yeah.
have control over every goddamn thing. That's the reason why they were mad about the tournament. It's not that the whole scandals. If the tournament was hugely successful and there weren't any scandals, Nintendo always would have been like these motherfuckers right here because they weren't in control of it.
Yeah.
Um, Nintendo's all about, well, we want to control every aspect of what this is, and fuck you if you want some too. And it's gotten
Yeah.
like when Iwata was alive, there was shit where they just let slide because like I don't care, as long as people are buying our handheld and our home console, and we're making money, we're double dipping because people are buying games across both platforms in huge amounts. We got three pillars: our software and then our 2 bits of hardware. We're good. They don't have three pillars anymore.
Yeah.
They got two. They got their well, technically I guess you could say their games as a service, like their Nintendo Online, but I'm not paying for that shit, so fuck that. I know some people are like, oh, but I like the family plan. I'm the only one in my house who plays my Switch, so I ain't paying $35 a year or $75 a year for no goddamn family plan. Um, anyway,
Yeah.
let's keep it moving. Um, Agree, disagree, don't care.
Uh, I understand where you're coming from. They do want to be in control for the most part.
Yeah.
And most of these Japanese companies are like that. Like, you know what? I thought it used to just be a Nintendo problem, and then when I found out what Toei was doing to totally not mark, I was like, this actually might just be a Japan problem.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. They basically want to be in control of all aspects of the thing, not realizing that being in business means that there's a certain point where a product's out of your hands and it's out of your control, and you just gotta let
yeah,
it roll down. You know,
yeah,
you're not gonna be in control of every single aspect of everything that's happening in a business because that is a what's the word I'm looking for? That's an unrealistic expectation.
yeah,
And you tell someone that and they get mad about it. Like, oh, well, I I was like, look, it's an unrealistic expectation.
Do you need something, Captain?
All right.
yeah,
Um,
How's it going?
it's an unrealistic expectation for you to expect these games to for you to have absolute control over every aspect of a game. It's
yeah,
unrealistic.
yeah,
Now, does that mean they're not going to try and do it? Yeah, they're going to try and do it because they're lazy, but it's an unrealistic expectation.
yeah,
Unfortunately, and that's the world we live in. It's a lot of unrealistic expectations in gaming. Am I happy about that? No, but that's the world we live in. A lot of
yeah,
unrealistic expectations. Um, but that's gaming, folks.
yeah.
Let's see. Do I have an unpopular opinion? Oh yeah, I do. I do. So I recently was watching. I recently was watching. Was reading an article about how shit. What's it called? What was the name of that game? Fuck. How shit. Kong Skull Island, the video game is, and
Yeah,
I was like, what did you expect? It wasn't gonna be good.
yeah,
It was gonna be trash.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's
what did
made by a
you?
company that's notoriously, you know,
It was Game Mill made it. I mean, it's in the name,
yeah,
Game Mill. Are you expecting quality from a developer called Game Mill?
yeah, exactly.
That's just that's your own damn fault. Look, you brought that shit on yourself, okay? They didn't have shit to do with that. That was you. You did that. Like sometimes I'm like, oh no, that's so sad, and sometimes I'm just like, nah, you did that to yourself. Look, they ain't have shit to do with that. That was you. That was all you.
Yeah,
This here is our fine, so you can get the hell out or we'll kill you.
yeah. That I don't know. I heard about it, and when I saw it, I was like, this looks kind of. This does look. This looks
It looked
okay.
interesting. To be honest with you, it did look kind of interesting, but I knew, like, I was like, okay, this looks interesting, but I just was kind of like, something about this seems off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I was right. I was like, because when they were like, "This is Kong," I'm like, first of all, that doesn't look like King Kong, you know.
yeah,
Like I don't know who the fuck that is. That's not King Kong. Maybe Donkey Kong or Funky Kong, but not King Kong. and secondly, I was like, Okay, all right, okay. That's what we're rolling with. Okay, cool. Um, all right. So that's what we're doing. Okay, cool. All right. I get where you're coming from. Um, are you doing anything else here? No. More bullshit.
Yeah.
My point is, yeah, and apparently it's like the lowest scoring game of this year. It's a 15 on Metacritic. It's pretty goddamn bad. I know.
It's low. I think it's lower than even going.
Shit, I'm like, God damn. I mean, how bad do you have to be? Apparently pretty goddamn bad. I was like, damn, I ain't never seen no shit like that before.
Yeah.
But that's the world we're dealing with. Broken ass. I mean, I was like, and apparently I'm gonna just look at some of the I'm gonna look at the thing. Let's see. Skull Island, Rise of Kong. Okay, all right. Okay, so the guy says, I have a bit of a soft spot for terrible video games. Rogue Warrior and Ride to Hell Retribution are games that are objectively awful and were justly panned by critics, have offered me countless hours of enjoyment with their goofy dialogue and hilariously janky gameplay. If anyone was going to enjoy Skull Island, Rise of Kong, even if it was for all the wrong reasons, that person should have been me. The jury is already in on Skull Island Rise of Kong, so there's no reason to beat around the bush. Yes, this game is dreadful, but it managed to fall short of even the already rock bottom expectations I had after watching the trailer. Skull Island Rise of Kong isn't just a contender for the worst game of 2023. It may genuinely be the worst game I have ever played. Skull Island Rise of Kong. Skull Island Rise of Kong is a beat-em-up, platforming, exploration-focused adventure that sees you take on the role of a young Kong, not yet king. Actually, he was never king because Godzilla kicked his ass every time he challenged him. As he scours Skull Island for his parents' killers. There is no further plot beyond this. You watch Kong's parents get killed, then you kill Kong's parents' killers. Nothing noteworthy happens in between these two points. But even this basic story setup manages to be dysfunctional in its origins. You'd be forgiven. I tell you, this is some good writing. You'd be forgiven for thinking this is a tie-in to the game, a tie-in game to the Kong Skull Island film universe and the Netflix animated show Skull Island. But no, this adaptation is based on the King Kong of Skull Island brand. A separate franchise seemingly based on the comic adaptation of the original novel that also spawned an in-development Disney Plus series. Yes, there are now two separate King Kong universes running simultaneously under the control of two different companies. Trying to get to the bottom of this tangle of licensing and public domain disputes is at least marginally more fun than actually playing this game. Yeah. I'll be fair to Skull Island. Rise of Kong by focusing on the positive first. This is a very short paragraph. It's like 3 sentences. The orchestral tracks, sparsely interspersed throughout the game, are pretty good. Also, the load times are very fast. There is no third positive. I tell you, this guy is eviscerating this game. I completed Skull Island Rise of Kong in roughly 8 hours, which might fool you into thinking that the game has 8 hours of content to offer. However, it is in no way an exaggeration to say that 90% of my playtime was spent in circles until I eventually bumped into each stage's boss fight. Instead of offering players a straightforward way of discovering where they should be heading, like a mini-map or a quest marker, Skull Island Rise of Kong instead features the roar mechanic, roar in quotations. Getting Kong to roar will cause something akin to fireworks shoot into the sky, which is supposed to show you that there's an area beneath them that's worth discovering. The main problem with this mechanic is that roaring doesn't point you in the direction of the stage's end goal. It just points you in the direction of anything in your immediate vicinity that you can interact with, whether that be a collectible or a chance to earn some skill points. To make matters worse, the roar mechanic is also tied to the same button as your primal rage, in quotes, buff, which means roaring outside of combat drains the same resource, whether you want it to or not. Exploration is also hampered by the game's shoddy visuals. The one-tone palettes and unremarkable layouts of each map make every surface and area indistinguishable. You can walk from one end of the map to the other and swear you've already passed the same location 5 times already. It certainly doesn't help that the platforming sections in the game are infuriatingly imprecise at their best and simply broken at their worst. Most distances need to be cleared by either sprint jumping, aggravated to no trigger in a small space thanks to its mandatory run-up, or by making use of an incredibly inaccurate leap ability. Climbing vines also has a 1 in 5 chance of completely bugging out and freezing Kong in place, forcing you to reset your last autosave and potentially start an entire platforming section over. There are enough bugs throughout to render the game almost unplayable in its current state. I lost count of the amount of times I fell through the floor, glitched out of bounds. Collision seems to be an afterthought in these maps. Fights that required me to clear all the enemies in one zone before I could progress often spawned enemies outside of the zones I was trapped in. Textures in the environment popped in and out at random. Finishing moves almost never triggered even when I was right next to an enemy. Parrying enemies seemed to work only about 50% of the time. Locking on to enemies had the habit of making the camera aim directly at Kong's feet. Even simply trying to load a save has a good chance of making the game freeze unrecoverable. The combat essentially boils down to just clicking the left mouse button until all the enemies are dead, and none of the bosses are mechanically fun or interesting. Inclusion of features like a lock-on, parries, and dodge rolls hint at a Souls-like influence, but none of these mechanics are remotely useful outside of a couple of boss fights. Repeating the same one-button combos ad nauseum is usually the only effective strategy. Perhaps it's a blessing, then, that the enemies that litter the environments are so passive they can be avoided entirely by just walking past them. They seem to serve mostly just as a padding to make the world look less barren. It's clear the game was rushed to completion under less than ideal circumstances. I hesitate to even call the final product functional, let alone enjoyable. Indeed, a report from The Verge claims that publisher Game Mill Entertainment gave developer Iguana Bee only year to develop it and failed to properly support and finance the project, making the project near impossible. I won't claim there's hidden potential here. There's hidden potential here. Morton could have saved it from being a boring brawler outside of a complete rethink. But it might at least have saved it from being the buggiest, messiest, most widely mocked boring brawler of 2023. Guess how much this game costs?
How much?
$40.
Wow.
Yeah, this should be like a $20 game.
Yeah.
The developer apparently only had a year to make it, and they weren't even paid for that. So, look, folks, if you have a job that needs to get done, pay those people their fucking money.
Yeah.
All right? Okay? Because you can either pay for something to be done. It's the rules of paying for shit to get done, okay? You can get something done quickly, but it's going to be expensive if you want the quality. You can have something be done quickly and cheaply, but the quality's going to be shit. You can have something be done right, but it's going to take a long time and it's going to be expensive because you got to pay for those people to do the work over a long period of time. Or you can pay for something to be done correctly, but quickly, but it's going to be even more expensive because people are going to be rushing that shit. The point is, behind all of this is to simply say this. You can't have all three at the same time, okay? You can't have something done quickly and cheaply and then be, oh, I can't believe this shit is also broken.
Yeah.
You know, like you're not going to get all three. All three is never going to be there, all right? But, you know, tis what it is, what it is, what it is. So with that being said, that's the end of the cast. Anything you want to pimp out before we wrap things up, sir?
Project Console. Project Console Tuesdays at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time.
All right. This is Mr. Red Fox, owner proprietor BS Busters. Thank you for joining the cast. If you want to get in touch with the cast, you can reach me at mrredfoxbsbuster@gmail.com. There's also a link to the Discord in the description. That's the end of the cast. Peace and good night.